Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. Real Estate Coaching Radio is the nation's #1 daily radio show for realtors who demand authentic, real-time coaching. Get ready for fluff-free, unfiltered, full-strength honesty about what's truly working to get you into action, helping others, and making money now in today's real estate market. Now to our hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
3, 2, 1, and we are back. Hey, Julie, welcome to Friday, July 17th.
Yes, made it through another week. How about that?
We
Isn't that how it feels for 2020?
Yeah, it does. Oh, so Julie discovered something. You know, we're coming up with a list of the craziest things about 2020. And of course, you guys have your own lists. And there's a list that all of us share, the pandemic and the depression and the whatever. But Julie discovered something yesterday, which was just, I thought she was making it up until she sent me proof. And it was, Julie?
Are you talking about the flying snakes?
The flying snakes.
Oh my gosh. Like, I don't know how I missed this story. I guess it's because it's so much to keep up with this year. And apparently there's a type of snake that lives in the trees and can actually, on purpose, fling itself from tree to tree up to 40 feet. And so much so, it likes flying so much that it actually undulates in the air like it knows what it's doing. So there you have it. And I also know that, I happen to know, because I've researched just in case, because you know it's 2020, did we have any snakes here in Puerto Rico? And there is one kind of snake that lives in the jungle for the most part that actually hangs out over caves and catches bats to eat as they emerge from the caves.
Well, so
why not?
Mental notes there. A, don't go to caves.
And snakes are gross.
B, if you do have to go to a cave, don't look like a bat.
There you are.
Those are my big 2 takeaways from that. By the way, I don't know if you guys knew this. Puerto Rico has the largest rainforest, and one of the largest rainforests in the world, but certainly the largest rainforest in the United States, right? Mm-hmm. So it's actually amazing. We drove through there. We're certainly not doing a very good job of being touristy enough and driving down to the jungle. It's probably about 45 minutes from our house, but the leaves there were the largest leaves I've ever seen.
Ever. Like the size of sheets.
Right. So Julie and I,
Incredible.
you guys probably know her from Columbus, Ohio, and you'd, go to wherever you're going to go to buy your house plants, and your house plants would be, hopefully they live, and so you'd maybe buy a fern, or you'd ever maybe buy, so this is where those things are from. And
naturally.
So when you drive around, especially in the jungle, but really most places where there's, nice looking landscaping and whatnot, you're going to see ferns that are the size of I don't even know, small houses basically. And leaves on some of the plants that just would have been normal, pick it up at the grocery store house plant that maybe grows to be about the size of I don't even know what, a football. Here they grow massive, and you just what the hell? And it's the exact same species, the exact same plant. It's just that here it's obviously in its element versus being in a little pot someplace. And actually that kind of, that's an interesting correlation or interesting connection between our topic today, because people, generally speaking, really only do grow to the size of the pot. Oh, did you see that connection? Come on, I get credit for that.
That was good, especially on the fly. Very good.
No, very good. It's the coffee. It's kicking in. Yeah, but so that is a fact, though. People only grow to the size of the pot that they choose to plant themselves in. True. What most people don't realize is, unlike a plant, they can choose their own pot, and that's the problem that most people, I think, are plagued with, is they're thinking that ultimately, and this, we're going to get back to our points that we were talking about in the topic of the call this is part 3. It's called...
We're talking about never, ever say these things to yourself. Delete, not allowed to say it.
Right. These are all the little sort of subconscious little snipes we make against ourselves that make it so we never leave the tiny little pot in which most of us were born in. Remember this statistic, guys. It is very fascinating. Something like 95% of all Americans are born and die within the same 20-mile radius to the exact same spot. Now, maybe some of them took some trips in the, in between those 2 significant, days of being born and dying. But unfortunately, most people, they never get outside of their own little pot. They never get outside of their own little environment. And so they're stuck for their entire lives in an echo chamber that's repeating the same limiting beliefs about what they're capable of in life. I hope that doesn't offend any of you, because we didn't know that until we started experiencing that personally, and then we certainly experienced it through all the coaching calls. Coaching calls are the most cathartic thing you could possibly ever experience as far as helping people work out their own problems after you've done about 100,000 one-on-one calls. Yeah. We've done more than that each. Julie and I have been doing one-on-one coaching. I don't think there's anyone that's done as many coaching calls as us in the industry. I pretty much can guarantee you there isn't. Yeah. But yeah, so it's cathartic where you sort of like someone brings a problem to a call, and maybe a lot of times, frankly, it's the same problems that people have. But other times they're more complex and they're kind of intertwined, personal and business, and you work those problems out with people. And hey, guess what? Maybe 5 years later, you've got the same challenge and you've already helped somebody through it. So you just saved yourself the learning curve, because you helped somebody else through that same problem. And really, guys, at the end of the day, that's why coaching is such a blessing, and we love doing it. It's really our life's calling. I am hesitant to say it's our passion because it's really not. We're going to talk about the fallacy of believing you have to be passionate about something to be successful. But we would love the opportunity to have you guys become coaching clients. At least consider the fact that in this changing market, what else are you going to do if you don't hire somebody that's going to get you through this long kind of rickety bridge from the old world to the new world? I was listening to something today from an author. I think this guy's pretty undisputed as being a real go-to expert. His name is Jim Rickards, and I was watching a video, and he was talking about really what's happening in the economy from an economist's perspective, but not just an economist's perspective, but somebody who can sort of model out what's going to come next. You could see how that's Tim nerdy stuff, and it was great. It's fantastic. I'm going to probably buy his new book. But one of the things I learned from that specific video was that he's already saying we're in a depression, and it's going to stay. We're going to stay in this economic cycle for, he said, at least 5 years. During that time, there's going to be more new business. It's exactly what Julie and I've been saying. Is what I'm saying to you. There's going to be more new businesses that are going to form. There's going to be more. There's going to be essentially an explosion of creativity. You're going to see all these people that would have never been able to, essentially be incredibly successful if they were trying to do so in the old world. The old world was only 4 months ago, but that will find their place in the new world. And it really is, it's an experience that all of you guys can share in if you're willing to move forward with the understanding, at least opening your minds to the fact that you do have to learn new things for the new market. And once you do, once you know how to help people, and once you're versatile enough to change on the fly sometimes and be able to, it's the old toolbox analogy, right? You're walking into a listing presentation and, you have your typical hammer and your screwdriver. Well, what if all of a sudden it requires a wrench? What if all of a sudden it requires all kinds of specialized tools that you don't have, let alone know how to use? Well, you're going to find yourself, your world's getting smaller and smaller, because you're going to find fewer and fewer people that just need the old hammer and wrench to solve the problem. And if you don't know how to use the other tools, let alone if you don't have them, you'll quickly find yourself irrelevant. You might find, right now, you might find, maybe 6 or 7 out of 10 people want to do business with you just off your, what you know and your personality and what you bring to the market. Well, in the new market, without you updating your skill set, you might be lucky if you find 1 person out of 10 that essentially will be able to do business with you because you don't know how to, essentially help them. And a lot of times the help, interestingly enough, isn't just the transactional, A to B, fill this form out and then that form. It's actually psychological, because a lot of the psychology of a changing market, just like all of you guys, just like us, it's scary. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to recreate myself. I have to kind of be starting to challenge myself and think bigger thoughts. What is it? And we always start, by the way, and we have our coaching clients start, write a list of the things you absolutely know for sure. Like with regards to your business, write down all the things you absolutely positively, you die on the tallest of hills because you're so sure you're right about those things, and then challenge every single one of them. Because what happens is when you think you're right about something, it's going to automatically basically keep you from seeing where your blind spots are. So start with all the things you think you're absolutely positive about, and assume that none of those things will be relevant in 12 months. Now, most of them will, hopefully, but if you start with the premise that most of them won't, then it's going to open your mind to where you might be having, as our good friend Elon Musk likes to call it, your threat vectors, right? Isn't that basically it?
It is.
So if you are interested in learning more about our coaching program, just text the word Harris, Harris, to 31996. Text the word Harris, Harris, to 31996. And when you do, we're going to text you back, just as a way of saying thanks, we're going to text you back some books to download, the Real Estate Treasure Map, and a whole bunch of other books too. So, and the Real Estate Treasure Map is your fill-in-the-blank business plan. Your 90-day massive action plan is there. So just go ahead and text the word Harris to 31996. And Julie, I believe we are on point number 9.
You got it. And point number 9, remember the topic is never ever say these things to yourself. So this is the continuation of what we started a couple of podcasts ago. Get caught up if you haven't been. So point number 9 is I need to form a big team or the market won't take me seriously. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, that is a belief that started basically back in the 90s, and we're going to start seeing the other side of that. And it's so funny how so many people jumped on the team bandwagon.
I know.
And I'm going to cut through all the bullshit, and I'm going to tell you guys why that's become so prolific. And it's not because it's not the best thing for agents. And I realize that many of you are following this team thinking that because that's what everyone's told you. And let's just you and I be honest, okay? You guys entered into this business, and many of you did not have a business background. You may have read some books, you may have followed some gurus on YouTube, and granted, some of the free education in the books you've read have been fantastic. But you have really no way of benchmarking whether the business information you're getting is valid or not. And I'm going to give you guys the ultimate filter when you're trying to decide what to listen to and what not to, or frankly, what to read or who to pay attention to. Are they leading with profit with their conversations? And the answer with the team gurus, of which there's now a plenty, is no. And the reason is because there's really virtually no profit in teams, especially when the market starts to change. So back when Julie and I started selling real estate, and this was over 25 years ago, this is when the team model was really starting to scale. A guy named Howard Brinton through Star Power, that was the name of his company, started to actually, create systems around the teams. And, some of you guys know the name Diana Kokoska, who essentially started working over at Keller Williams, and a whole bunch of other people that were essentially, their ideas were germinated and they were essentially created and built upon within the Star Power thing. They then shared those ideas with Keller Williams in its formidable years. Gary's book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, all those ideas are just basically mostly repackaged ideas that were taught on Star Power. Virtually none of those were original thoughts. And I actually talked with Gary Keller about this before, and he admits it, and he knows it's true. And who cares? It's fine, right? Ideas are an evolution of the ideas that came before, and every time it gets a little bit better, hopefully. But the difference is the teams back then were not predicated on providing buyer leads for buyer's agents. And the commissions were more. And there are a whole bunch of other factors that made it so teams back then, you actually could make a profit, especially off the buyer side.
Well, there was no opportunity really to buy leads. There was no Trulia or Zillow or
Well, you could buy them through
Realtor.com.
postcards or
Yeah,
stuff like that.
but it wasn't the same. It wasn't like buying impressions and seeing how it would go.
Yeah, some of you guys now pay you get a referral. Woohoo, I'm getting a referral. But you don't actually you've never done the math on how much money you're actually paying for that referral. I actually had somebody text me, and we were having a conversation about a specific should I take a referral type question, and I worked out the math with them. It would have worked out to be a $10,000 gross commission, but get this, listeners, after all the fingers that were in the pie, the agent would make about $2,500. And I told him not to just don't take the referral. Oh, Tim, what are you talking about? Then they'll lose the potential referrals from that agent. Well, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but how much time are they not going to have wasted where they could go out and get business, which is going to be, 4 times as much profitable. They go out and get 4 transactions following our coaching system, and then they'll have 4 transactions, get a lot more referrals from it. Oh, and by the way, what makes you so sure that agent that lead that was with the relocation company in this case will even be in a position to send you referrals, because they're probably not going to be there long enough. Anyway, so you guys get the point. Drill down when you're hearing people share ideas with you, and when you're trying to analyze something, the ultimate filter is what's the profit? What is the profit? And if you hear people saying, and this is really a heinous lie that's told to agents, is, oh, you have to keep on doing it and then eventually you're going to be able to sell your company. No, you won't. Nobody buys teams. Nobody really buys brokerages. Brokerages don't sell for any multiple. Brokerages are just as bad as teams. The difference between a team and a brokerage is virtually nothing nowadays.
Well, here's the proof for our listeners. Ask yourself who you personally know who's gotten a big fat paycheck for their team.
Well, there's nobody.
Nobody.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, you might find a way to refer your business off to somebody that wants to, sort of take your business over, and you could possibly make money from that, and there's those types of things. But for the most part, guys, the whole point of you running your real estate business or any business is to make profit. Some of you get confused about that because you hear all these modern day business gurus that are talking about the fact that you don't have to make profit. You can put your profits off to the future. You guys are reading business books that are not written for you because they're written for people who are seeking investors to essentially invest in their businesses. So if you were running a business that you could get a multiple, so like say for example, you had a business and your business had $1 million in revenue, okay? And let's say in your particular sector, let's say it was, I don't know, let's pick something arbitrary. Let's say you're running a dry cleaning business, right? And let's say you had $1 million in revenue. That business, if you put it for sale, would sell for, hypothetically, I'm guessing, no more than 2 or 3 times probably net operating income. So if you had a business that had $1 million in revenue, and let's say that business you made $300,000 a year, it's possible that business would be worth, say, $600,000 to $750,000, something like that. Maybe a lot less, I'm just guessing. That's basically a real basic way of thinking about multiples. And then some businesses trade off or essentially are valued off their net income, and other businesses are valued off their gross income. Now, there's all kinds of fancy accounting terms and all this, but we're, EBITDA and GAAP accounting, and we're not going to talk about any of that. Let's just keep it pure. And so net is the amount of money you have left over after you've paid all your expenses, and gross is the amount of money, obviously, that your business takes in every year. So let's go back and let's say, for example, a business that grosses $1 million in revenue, and let's say that business is a tech company, right? And so that tech company sector, it could just be, a CRM, or it could be a software as a service. It could be, now in that space, the business would trade for maybe, 4, maybe 7 times top line. So you could have a business that earned $1 million a year where you were making no profit. Matter of fact, you could even be losing money and burning money from private investors. And you could be making no profit. You could actually be losing money. But because of the sector that the business is in, the market would say, well, that business is worth $5 million, or the business is worth $7 million. You guys see the difference? And so there's all these business gurus, and what they do is they cater to that type of crowd where the businesses are going to be essentially able to trade at a multiple. Your real estate business does not trade at a multiple. Your team does not trade at a multiple. Your brokerage does not trade at a multiple. It trades at less than earnings. So you're essentially looking at businesses that have no value. So the only profit, or the only way, like getting rich, you don't get rich selling real estate is the punchline. You get rich with reinvesting the profits from having sold real estate, which most of you won't have enough profit to ever reinvest it, so you never get rich. You guys get it? Add teams. Now, why is it that brokers in the industry want you guys to build teams? What's the real reason? Do consumers give a rat's ass? No, they do not. Do agents give a rat's ass? Yes, they do, because it makes them feel proud because they built a team. But who ultimately is pressuring you to build a team, and how do they benefit from it? I want you to think about this, assuming your filter is as suggested profit, and knowing, if maybe you don't know and you want to have a free coaching call with me and talk about this, you can just, go to freecoachingcallsforagents.com, freecoachingcallsforagents.com, and we'll help you with the math. If you're a real estate broker, if you're Keller Williams, for example, right? And the hardest job in any real estate brokerage is recruiting. They have all kinds of little enlightened sounding names for it, but at the end of the day, it's recruiting. That's the hardest job. Team leads and all that are supposed to recruit agents. That's what they get, paid to do. Well, it's a hard job because you have to do actual work to recruit agents. You have to prospect them. You have to get them in appointments. You have to tell them why they want to leave your brokerage or their brokerage for another brokerage. It's real work, right? So what the industry has figured out a way to do is kind of trick all of you guys into thinking, well, you know what, Julie, you're super successful. Congratulations. You sold 30 houses. You know what? You need to hire an assistant. Mm-hmm. You need to start building your team. Yeah. You need to follow the 7 steps and get to this 7th level and walk down this golden path and somehow get to build all that. That's the next step, right? Right. So, and that's what a lot of you guys do because, well, hell, why would these people not tell me the truth? And Bob and Betty are, they've done it and all these other people are done it. Look at all the people getting awards and plaques and they have all formed teams. And, well, no one ever talks about net income. I don't know, this Tim and Julie, they're talking like crazy people right now. I've never heard anyone. Well, no one does talk about net income in real estate because they don't want you guys to know what a crappy ass business model forming a team is. Well, so the broker goes, if I can get all these agents, ambitious agents like the lovely Julie Harris, to somehow think that she has to form a team in order to be deemed as successful, I have now figured out a crafty way to get a whole bunch of other people doing the hardest job in real estate brokering, which is sponsoring agents or recruiting agents. I've just formed all these little teams are in my brokerage, and all these little teams now are doing the recruiting for me. My team. In my brokerage, right. And my brokerage continues to grow, and I don't actually have to do any of the recruiting or as much recruiting myself. And that is the biggest reason why. And look, if you're a big franchise and you're a big proponent of teams and you're doing the math, well, somebody joins and they pay Julie, we can hear that. Somebody joins and they pay a annual, a licensing fee, or they pay some kind of annual cost to be part of the team. they're going to basically they're going to have to pay like $3,000 a year. So if you are an ambitious agent, like our Julie Harris example, and you add 3 agents to your team, and that means that every year there's going to be some sort of $3,000 fee that's going to pass back to the mothership. Do you guys get how all this works? This is basically the slippery slope that forming a team is. And then here's the other thing. You say, Tim, what are you talking about? Don't you know about delegation? You have to form a bit. Okay, there is a book. You guys should read it. It was back from the 90s, really from the late 80s, called The E-Myth. You guys should read that book, because that is a lot of what the Howard Brinton people and thus the Keller Williams people base the premise on. You delegate. You essentially form a team. As this has all become sort of widely accepted modern zeitgeist, you're supposed to, in order to have a successful business, you're supposed to have a team of specialists who each do their individual jobs. You guys know what I'm talking about. But here's the bitter truth of how it actually works. You go from basically spending your time putting deals together, and look, we're not anti-team. Don't get me wrong here. We're pro-team, but we're pro-profitable team. And that's what we teach in our coaching business. We're not going to tell you to add a bunch of buyer agents and start buying buyer leads just for the sake of doing transactions. That's where you guys get caught in the snare, this team snare. We're going to do the math, and we're going to make decisions based on what's going to create the most profit for you. You have to have a profit-driven business. Otherwise, you're running a non-profit business, which is going to end up making it so you're going to toil away years, months, and you're going to end up with nothing to show for it other than basically a bunch of plaques and awards on the wall. That is the bitter truth about the team bullshit that's been perpetuated with intensity, especially over the last really 15 years.
Well, it's a hamster wheel, isn't it?
Exactly.
In order to feed your team, you've got to do more transactions, more units all the time. You got to feed them.
So if you study the most successful, and by success we mean most profitable agents in the country, do they have teams? They might claim they have teams, but what they have is it'll be like, look, Jade Mills, right? I had her on the podcast, and she is unbelievably successful out in LA. Just a fantastic lady, like one of the royalty of real estate, right? Does she have a team? I asked her that when I was interviewing her. She sort of paused and she said no. And the reason that she paused is because saying you don't have a team is almost like having a team and believing in that whole thing has become like a religion. And anybody that forces you to question your beliefs about a team, somehow you are not part of their group, and they're going to do everything they can to make you feel, they're going to ostracize you. And that's what happens. So here's the moral of the story. If you want to run a truly profitable real estate practice, we do want you to have a transaction coordinator. We do want you to have someone to help you as far as essentially perform the administrative tasks to service your sellers. But as far as forming buyer agents and adding buyer agents and then just giving them leads, that's where you're going to lose all your money. That's the stupidest way to build a business. Now, why did the teams work back in the day? They did work because the teams were hiring agents, and the agents had to do their own lead generation. Can you imagine nowadays if you wanted to form a team?
They'd quit immediately.
And you said, okay, well, I'll hire you. You can be part of my team. We're going to provide you support. We're going to train you up, and you can.
But you have to generate.
But you have to generate. No agent's going to join that team. No agent's going to join that brokerage.
Never.
And that's the same thing that's happened to brokerages. You guys have all been caught in this paradigm that you're supposed to provide everything to your agents. And still, the failure rate in real estate, 18 months, 85% of all agents fail. So do you think providing them leads and all this, hand-holding has done them any good? What should have been happening is we should have been training them up so they could be self-sufficient. And ultimately, when we tell you, and we're giving you this, point that you have to form a team, which is point number 9, be deemed as successful. Look, in some worlds, yeah, you're right, you do. So if your goal is to have a bunch of plaques and awards and people to applaud you and you to walk around like you're something that you know in your heart you're not, then yeah, that's your goal. If your goal is to be famous and not be rich, where your money works for you, you no longer work for your money, form a team. Do the biggest team you can.
Why not?
Yeah, hire the Goodyear
that's
blimp.
Your thing.
Yeah, exactly, that's your thing. You're more into ego and you're more into recognition than you are into profit.
But don't come crying to us when the market changes.
Well, which is most of what they do.
That's
I mean,
right.
last time when the market changed, we had some of the biggest teams that came to us, and they came to us because they did not know how to essentially make profit out of their teams because they gotten so addicted to spending the money to provide the leads, and their egos had become so entrenched with the idea, I have a team of 22 people, or I have a team of 15 people. It wasn't about the profit. It was, we sold 400 houses last year. Well, zippity-doo-dah.
Well,
Fantastic.
And I remember the first
How much
time we
profit
realized
did
that.
you make?
Yeah, when we were deciding to go, okay, so we've had those experiences. We're not just shooting this over the bow. It's because we've known people who have done hundreds of transactions who have very little profit. Yeah, they've got some plaques. That's fine. And here's the thing, Tim, to your earlier point, it's not that we're anti-team per se. We're anti-non-profitable team.
That's
we
right.
coach teams. But we have very serious conversations about how they're spending their money, what they're getting for their expenditure, how they're handling the leads, the fact that they have to actually coach their people how to
let's give an example.
handle leads. I mean, there's lots of agents that have crap tons of leads, but they don't know what to do with them. So
here's one of the rules. If we're coaching your team, right, the first rule is there are no riders, there are only rowers. How dare you suggest that? Yes.
How accountable of you.
Every single person on your team, or whatever you want to call them, they have to basically be profit producers, and it has to be direct profit. For example, you cannot have every single staff member has to have a profit and loss statement on them, even support staff. Support staff have to be able to pay for themselves through doing, for example, BPOs. It's not enough for your transaction coordinator just to close transactions. They actually, if you're paying your transaction coordinator, let's say, I don't know, $3,000 a month, they have to do an equal number of BPOs every single month to cover that $3,000. In a market like the one we're entering into, trust me, guys, you do not want any riders. You only want rowers. And you probably have, it's in everywhere you look because you're caught in the echo chamber of, oh, Tim, you're already talking about, I listened to this guru and that guru, and they all told me I'm supposed to form these big teams. Guys, listen. When the real estate transactional volume slows down, which it's going to do, when there is depreciation in the marketplace, which there will be next year, well, how are you going to support your team? How are you going to just throw more buyer leads at them? They're all going to leave anyway. So while there's still time, let's have a real conversation about the smartest thing you can be doing right now to make it so you not just survive through this transitioning market, you thrive because of the transitioning market. Do consider texting me directly if you want to have that conversation, 512-758-0206. Well, that was a lot on point number 9.
Well, it was, but
let's go to point number 10.
Yeah, you got it. So point number 10 is, let's see, branding. Here's another dark hole, right? Branding will magically make people want to do business with me. And the thought is, let's compare reputation versus branding. What is branding anyway? Let's define that.
Well, Julie just said it, right? So here's the thing. What is branding? It doesn't even mean anything, does it? What does branding mean? Here's a quiz. Okay, I'll give you a pop quiz. Branding, number 1, it means reputation. Branding, number 2, it means your logo. Branding, number 3, it means what people feel about you when they think of your company.
Perception.
Right? I mean, we can keep on going with all these slippery, sliding, non-defining terms, but here's how it's sold. Here's how branding is sold to you. Everyone tells you that you need branding. You need to have your own brand. Why do people like to sell branding? Now, look, I'm not debating that you do, as your business grows, you do need to have some resemblance of personalization for the sake of differentiating yourself in the marketplace. So if that's what you're calling branding, I'm all in. But here's how it's sold. You guys are sold to believe that you need to have all this fancy branding because it's going to essentially fill in the gaps on your skills. What do I mean? You think you're buying branding, or you think you're buying a good reputation through your branding. That's it. So if you're conflating the two words, and they want you to conflate the two words because they want you to think that if you do all this fancy this and the fancy that and the brochures and the videos and the this, that, and the other thing, that somehow that is going to form a reputation for you that's going to essentially replace the way a real reputation is formed, which is through having helped a lot of people with a lot of real estate transactions. And what's even worse is you believe that you think the branding is actually going to bring you real estate transactions, and it does not. The branding will not bring you real estate transactions. That is just an elegant lie. How do I know that? Because look how much money is spent every single year on branding companies, and it would be wonderful to have them track all these agents to see how many of the agents are actually making a profit. Now, I 100% understand. If your litmus test, if your filter is not profit, if you're in this business to run a nonprofit, and the branding's making you feel good because you've always wanted to look like you're, on Shark Tank on CNBC, and you want to look like a rock star and have pictures taken leaning on somebody else's Bentley, and that's your brand, well, go for it. But that's not about running a business. That's not about making a profit. That's about ego. That's about narcissism. That's about a whole bunch of stuff that never leads to profit.
Yeah, that's absolutely. So it's unsustainable, for one. And it's not really all that authentic until you've earned it with your actual reputation. So I think it's a little tall hat, no cattle. And the thing is, when you have a lot of for sale signs that turn into in contract or pending signs that then turn into sold signs, that's your reputation, is the actual work. And then that person talks to their colleague at work and they refer you, and one thing turns into the next. That's the way you earn your actual reputation.
So arguably the most valuable brand on planet Earth is Ferrari, the car manufacturer. That is in every sort of test that's ever been done. It's the most recognizable, think about my point here, guys. The Ferrari, the prancing horse, the red, the whole thing. That has more brand appeal, more like people associate that with, all kinds of good things.
It's not just a car brand, it's seen as a lifestyle brand.
Right, it seems, yeah, exactly. So they basically made, okay, now here's the thing. What if Ferrari's cars sucked? What if Ferrari's cars were pieces of crap, right? What if Ferrari just made a car that, and Ferrari's cars are great. But what if they didn't? What if the Ferrari product actually was inferior? Would the brand make a difference? Oh, what? Hold on. So what Julie just said is the only answer. The way you form an everlasting brand is you form a reputation of somebody who's very successful at helping people solve their problems. And then the brand naturally follows your success. You can't skip the step. And that's the lie that you guys are believing, that you can spend a bunch of money on branding. It's going to essentially replace the, hard-earned reputation. It does not work that way.
Oh, that's it. So do you want to do another point?
Yeah, let's go to the next point.
All right.
We're on a roll.
We are. Sorry, I have to put on my
Coffee
glasses.
kicked in.
All right, so here's a fun one. I hate scripts. I can't do scripts. They're not me. They don't sound like me. I don't want to sound like a salesperson. I hate scripts.
This is your wheelhouse, sister.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. What is a script? Okay, so when you say that, remember our topic, things you're not allowed to say to yourself. When you catch yourself saying that to yourself, why is that? It's because your perception of a script is some kind of memorized sentence that doesn't really sound like you, and you have to do it exactly that way or you suck.
Well,
okay? And there's people that teach it that way.
Well, let me ask you a question, Julie. You give me an example of a professional that doesn't use a script.
Yeah, I can't even name any. They all, when you take a plane flight, all of that's scripted, thank goodness, right? Even when you go to the doctor, they've got a script, they hand you a checklist, that's their pre-qualification.
But isn't that the very definition of a professional, somebody who follows a script?
Yes, and isn't that ironic that agents love to complain how their clients or customers abuse them because they're not treated well? Well, it's because you guys don't treat it like a real business.
So why do you think agents don't follow scripts ultimately?
I think some of it's ego, I think some of it's fear, I think some of it is misunderstanding of what a script is meant to be and how to actually use it because you haven't spent enough time to really understand it. All a script is a series of logical questions that dig deep enough to find out somebody's motivation, time frame, and lead to a logical close using what's important to them. That's pretty logical, right?
Yeah.
That's just a series of questions. It helps you direct the conversation. It saves you a lot of time. And it focuses on your prospect instead of focusing. It's funny what agents do when they don't have scripts. They always make it all about them. You need to work with me because I've got this award and that award.
That's right.
And because I know these people and because, I've got a drip system.
Right. Well, but ultimately that's the thrust of it, right? Yeah. So if you're essentially, and guys, listen, we do have scripts. We do want you to memorize the scripts, but what we really want you to do is internalize our scripts and then personalize our scripts.
Which you can't do until you've actually studied them.
Right.
You can't skip a step and go right to personalization.
Exactly. Again, and that's what weak agents do. That's what weak salespeople do. They don't actually understand the reason that you ask. Like our scripts, as Julie just said, are conversation outlines. That's what they are. Mm-hmm. One question leading to the other, leading to the other, leading to the other, that results in a positive outcome for you and the client. That's what a script truly is. It's a bunch of questions that are logically thought through that result in a positive outcome, right? But what you guys will do is your egos will say, I can't read that. Those aren't my words. Those aren't this, the other thing. Right. And you never get to the point where you've actually perfected the script.
And you know what the problem with that is? These agents that bash scripts are the same agents that complain about commission cutting or commission objections. Because if you don't have a good script that shows your USPs, your unique sales proposition that shows exactly why they should use you, then the consumer is left with only one way of leveling the playing field. Really two, okay? Which is how you guys lose listings. Overpricing and undercommissioning.
Yep.
That's it, because they don't know how to make a choice other than just thinking about the money of it, which is two things, what the price is going to be and what you're going to charge. That's why you get the commission objection.
So, Julie, Everything we're saying right now is a script because we've said it a million times before. I mean, literally, we've said everything we're saying. Nothing's original.
Yes.
I think I've said one thing original. It was earlier on, and I don't remember what I said. The potted plant.
Yes,
thing.
that was original.
That was good.
And
That was it.
we'll use that again. It'll turn into a script.
Exactly. That was the first original thought I probably had in a month. The moral of the story, guys, the takeaway should be here is you have to use scripts if you want to be professional. If your ego tells you, I can't read that, they're not my words, I somehow magically, even though my last job was being a school teacher, can somehow write better scripts, you're wrong.
Or worse, decide that you don't need scripts somehow because you will magically overcome it. See how that's working out.
Well, actually, even worse than that are the people that basically take a little of this and a little of that and make their own script, even though they have no background, no sales background. Even if you do have sales background, you don't have sales background selling real estate. If you have sales background selling real estate, you don't have sales background selling real estate in a declining market. You guys get the point? So why would you work so extra? Why would you work so damn hard and risk so much failure not to follow a script? You really got to drill down and be introspective about that. Look, nobody likes being told what to do. I was just thinking about, okay, I'm going to tell you guys a funny story.
Throwing me under the bus. It's okay.
Yes, I am. Oh, it's so funny.
Funny for you.
All right, this really happened yesterday. So with Julie and I home office, and Zoe's, she's 6.5, actually 6, and she's pushing 7 now. She's on the downslope to 7, right? Mm-hmm. And she's and her and Julie had a blowout fight yesterday. As much as you can, right? And so she's blah blah blah. Zoe, man, oh my God, that kid could like nobody else. She's got the loudest, piercing voice.
Not shy.
And she's not shy, and she was all emotions and tears and hair and just mad. It looked like something
She was pissed.
Yeah, she was. She looked like an old school Muppet, What was that Muppet that used to play the drums with the red hair? Yeah, she looked like an animal. She was just so pissed off. So Julie gives her a timeout in her room, and 15 minutes to Zoe's like 1,000 years, Yeah. So it's 15-minute timeout, and then Julie gets on a coaching call. And so I go into Zoe's room, and Zoe's, she's off in a corner. She's got a table, a little table set by the window, and she's drawing a picture in a tablet. And I went in there to, make sure she's okay. And, Mom and Dad, I love you, the whole data routine. And she's so freaking cute. I can't help myself. So I go in there, and she's, off in her corner doing this little drawing. And, her face is still flustered. Her hair is still a mess. And I went in there and said, tell her, hey, Zoe, the reason that Mom and Dad sometimes have to, we have to help you understand right from wrong and how to treat people. And she just stared at me. She's got these really bushy brown eyebrows. She just stared at me. And I saw she was drawing something. And I said, Zoe, what are you drawing? And she goes, and then she pulled it close to her. She put it like right against her little chest. And she goes, I don't want to show you. I go, okay, well, why not? You can show Dad. And she goes, I'll show you when it's done. Okay, Zoe, got it. I'll show me when it's done, sweetie. Dad loves you. And then I had to get back to work. And so the picture she was drawing, and you guys will love this, was so Julie comes in off her coaching call. Then did Zoe give you the picture, or did you ask for it?
You told me about it, and then I discovered it.
Oh, I told you about this experience I had. Then you went to look at it. Mm-hmm. All right, so this picture was a picture of Zoe, and she had
drawn herself. And she had a little T-shirt on herself that said "The Boss."
No, the boss of the house.
The boss of the house.
Right.
And then a title at the top saying "Zoe is boss." So how about that for a power struggle? Yeah, there you are.
How did we get on that?
I don't know.
What was the spin into that story?
Probably not being coachable, perhaps. I don't know.
I don't know. That was so funny, though. You want to do another point?
We've made peace since then, but
yeah, exactly.
Yes, this is why we have one.
We're always open to more parenting suggestions. If
Please,
you guys,
SOS.
We've mastered the bribes and the threats.
Yeah, well, she's got her own script going, doesn't she?
Yes, she does.
Okay, so let's see. So scripts, and yes, we do have scripts for pretty much everything from prospecting to pre-qualifying, presenting, negotiating, closing. One of the common things we do on Premier Coaching is clients will have a situation. I call it situational scripts. And so we will talk about, that one canned right there is next. So we'll talk about, here's the situation, what should I say? And of course, all of our Premier calls are live, but I record them so that I can help students with some particular situational scripts, which almost always are based on inspections, appraisal, financing, negotiating, extending contracts, back and forth with agents, or just simply getting their clients to do the right thing. So there are scripts for everything, and I help you personalize those. So,
all right, so next point.
Next point, which I think is 11, quote, canned presentations just aren't me. I can't do them. Now, this is related to the previous point about scripts. Canned presentations. Now, again, let's define that. A canned presentation is a presentation that has a basic structure that you do time and time again. But a canned presentation, of course, has some nuances to it.
So let's define this so they understand. So most of you do not have listing presentations. Those of you who do have listing presentations have presentations that were provided by your broker, which is all about the broker, right?
And also is like everybody else in your brokerage's presentation.
I'm going to give you a little secret that you will discover after you've been in real estate for about 2 or 3 years. And remember, there's an 85% failure rate after 18 months. So I'm hoping you guys take this to heart and remember what I'm telling you, because there's so much ingrained into this very true statement. At the end of the day, ready for this? Nobody cares really that much who your broker is. They only care about the services you can provide to them. And if you think joining a specific brokerage is going to give you an advantage in the marketplace, though I suppose there are examples where that might be true, we've continuously seen where it's not true. And I'll give you an example. Like we have a lot of Manhattan coaching clients. We have a lot of California expensive market coaching clients in Beverly Hills and all the rest of it, right? And they would have argued that, oh my gosh, if you want to be in Manhattan, you have to be one of the 5 families or the 6 families. And they refer to the other brokerages that way. There's Corcoran and there's Douglas Elliman and all these big stoic brands. Nobody could ever open up another brokerage. No one could ever basically penetrate and get any market share, blah, 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 blah. Well, in comes Compass. And what does Compass do in Manhattan? Compass becomes the biggest threat to these old brokerages that have been in business forever, thus proving the point that nobody gives a rat's ass what your brokerage is. They care what you know. They care what you can do. And the longer you're in real estate, go to anybody who's been in the business for like I said, 3 to maybe 5 years and ask them the last time they got either a buyer or a seller because of the brokerage they were associated with. Nobody does, and you won't either. And so if you think that your brokerage's job is to support you, their job is to train you to a certain extent, their job is to help you form your campfire, help you light your campfire. Maybe they'll help you keep your campfire lit for a certain amount of time. But at the end of the day, it's your job to make that into a bonfire. And if you can't do that, you're not going to make it in real estate or, by the way, anything else. Yeah. So the broker's true job is to provide the infrastructure for you to be safe and successful. But if you really want to do something exceptional, you're going to have to learn and go get your own wood and how to make the fire bigger and how to keep the fire lit, so that's where a lot of you get confused about what a broker's role is. And so when we're saying, for example, it's important that you used a canned presentation, what we're telling you to do is have presentations similar to scripts for everything. Have a listing presentation. We, of course, have a turnkey listing presentation, which you guys can, personalize with your own personal stuff, and then you use it. We teach you how to use it. We have a canned, by canned again, it's templated. It's done for you. Pre-listing pack, a canned buyer presentation. Every single presentation that you might need. So here's the power of a presentation. When I was selling real estate with Julie, we used to some days go on 2 and sometimes 3 listing appointments because we used to do a lot of good proactive lead generation, doing exactly the things we teach you guys how to do. So we go on these presentations, and sometimes by the second presentation, but always by the third presentation when we had those long days. Trust me when I tell you I did not want to be at that seller's house.
Yeah.
Had it not been, I did not know what to say, did not know how to think. I was so burned out. My face hurt from smiling, right? So in those instances, had I not had a canned or a pre-prepared presentation, my presentation would have been awful. By having a canned or prepared presentation, I just said and did the exact same thing over and over again, like any professional does. So it's critical that you accept the fact that if you're going to run a real business and make consistent and have consistent, results from your efforts, you have to do the same thing over and over again. That way you can quantify what's working and what's not. So if you have a different listing presentation every single time, there's no way for you, let alone someone who might be helping you like us as your coach, are going to know what's working and what's not. So by using a canned presentation that we know works in all marketplaces and all price ranges, we know that if, we'll go through it with you, we'll ask you questions, we'll make you present it, we'll challenge you like a seller might, and we're going to look to see where you're weak and help you get better. That's what a coach does.
You'll never get better if you don't do it repetitively, right? Okay, so what's interesting about that is that agents who don't do that, I've had some of the funniest feedback, but it does make sense. I had an agent tell me not too long ago that they were so in over their head and they were so tired and so confused about what to say next with the seller, and that 2.5 hours had already gone by, that he figured the only way he could get the hell out of there, this is a quote, the only way I could get the hell out of there is to just cut my commission and overprice it just so I could go home. Well, that is an act of desperation at that point, right? That's because you don't have a canned presentation. Now, that does not mean that you're saying exactly the same words, exactly the same way to the same seller, but it does mean you have a specific pattern. And why do we give you a canned presentation, so to speak, with, again, memorize, internalize, personalize? It's because sellers always have the same objections. They always want the same thing.
They always say the exact same thing.
And because we also know that they are unclosable if you have not had a great presentation, which handles their objections.
It all starts, guys, with even before you're at the seller's house.
Right.
It starts with pre-qualifying them. And we teach you how to pre-qualify, right? But you have to ask these questions in a certain order. Like, I'll give you a really interesting little mind bender for you. Depending on your price range, probably 80% of all the buyers that are calling you about your new listing or actually have houses to sell. Mm-hmm. But you guys never get to the conversation about the house they have to sell because you're still focused on them being buyers. So we teach you how, with 3 questions, to root out every buyer call to see if they have a house to sell. Yes, we're telling you to pursue the buyer side, but obviously the listing side is where you want to be, because sometimes that could just very well be a neighbor who's calling to price check. But if you don't know how to pre-qualify, if you don't know how to ask them what their time frame is, what their motivation is, if you don't know how to ask if you're competing for the listing, wouldn't that be a good thing to know? What they think the house is worth, all these things that we teach you, and that happens even before you send their pre-listing pack.
What's worse than that is some of these guys don't even call what they believe is only a buyer lead back,
right?
Because they have so many buyers and they can't find inventory for them. They don't bother to call them back,
right?
And which means, of course, there's no opportunity to ask them which home in the neighborhood do you plan on selling. You think you're blowing off a buyer lead, you're actually blowing off a listing.
And what we teach you as part of our coaching program, and what every single top producing agent on the face of the planet does, is they get to the point where they're prominently a listing agent, and then they start referring off their buyers, not to team members, but they can refer the buyers off that don't have houses to sell to other agents that they trust, and usually collect as much as a 35% referral fee. Now, the buyers that have houses to sell, maybe you handle those internally. Maybe you don't. But the moral of the story is you have to be migrating all your best efforts to learning how to be a listing agent. And that's what we teach all of you guys to do. Some of you guys are already doing the heavy lifting to become listing agents. You just aren't asking the right questions because you don't know how to pre-qualify. How many times have you had a buyer that you were working with just to find out that they ended up listing their house with somebody else because you never even pursued the listing because you didn't even know they had a house to sell? Or you knew they had a house to sell, you just didn't know how to pursue the listing. And we go on down the rabbit hole with all this too. The pre-listing pack, our pre-listing pack is designed to remove every single objection that you guys are living in fear of hearing from that seller when you're sitting across from them at the kitchen table.
By the way, before they even say it.
Or, virtually on a Zoom, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the point of the pre-listing pack is to remove the why would I list with you? Remove the objection of what's your commission? Remove the objection of what are you going to do to sell my house? Remove the objection of tell me about your, all the things that they'll ask you that you guys are living in fear of having asked. That's what the pre-listing pack does. It removes the fear. So when you're actually, assuming they read the pre-listing pack, when you're actually at the seller's house, the listing presentation is whittled down to, with touring the house, a half hour or less. And you walk out with the contract signed. And they thank you because they can see you are a professional because you followed an organized approach. Do you think the sellers want to spend any more time with you than they absolutely have to? They don't. And so by being more professional, we've had brand new listing agents or brand new agents join our coaching program. And Julie, you've experienced this. You're the head coach. Mm-hmm. And where they'll take a listing from an experienced agent just because they sent a pre-listing pack.
That's right.
Tell us a story.
And because they've actually, studied the scripts and the coaching calls that go with it, because they go to Premier Coaching and they know what they're doing. Okay, so what does the average agent actually do on a listing? And this is also, nobody really coaches you or teaches you. Your broker's not going to teach you this. So sometimes you do this by default. The reason you have trouble closing and winning, many of you, is because you don't handle objections until the end. You think that your presentation is covering all of your bases, and yet the whole time the seller or sellers are sitting there holding on to their objections, the unanswered questions in their mind, until the very end. They're not even listening to what you say until you get
They don't even care what you're saying.
They don't care. They're just waiting waiting for you to stop talking for
about
the love of God.
yourself and your
That's right.
broker and about your dog and your hobbies and whatever virtue signaling charities you're involved with.
At the end, where you're ready to close, what do? They smack you in the head with objections. And then you freak out, you tap dance, you try and handle it, which, sometimes comes out egotistical, sometimes you don't even have an answer.
Or you get defensive and you walk out because they wouldn't agree to my price.
And then you say, well, I'll follow up, I'll call you next week. That's not closing. The definition of closing is a logical ending to a great presentation. A great presentation handles objections before they even open their mouth, so they can then listen to the rest of why they're going to hire you. It's very logical. And I remember when you and I had that aha moment, we were like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And the great byproduct of that is it massively shortens your appointment with them. And by the time you show up, when you've done all of the steps right, we do coach a 7-step listing process. Okay, when you follow all 7 steps, it's almost too good to be true. Mm-hmm. And I love it when agents come to the premiere calls where they're like, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, actually, I do.
They talk about it. I read posts like that on our private on our members only Facebook page all the time.
Well, it works like clockwork.
Right. They're like,
yes, because you answered the question. So what's the definition of an objection? It's an unanswered question in the mind of the seller. Answer the question and move on. That way you can have a real conversation.
But that's what the pre-listing pack does for you.
Before you get there.
Before you get there. You don't want to be in the situation where you're ever emotionally feeling like you're on your heels, because that causes you to say and do dumb things. It does for everyone, right?
You can actually talk yourself out of a listing.
Right. I didn't take that because the condition was bad, or I didn't take that listing because they were friends with Betty Bebop from the country club or whatever.
No.
Right? You guys will make all these excuses, but the reason you didn't take the listing is because the seller chose somebody else because they thought the other somebody else was more competent. They outsold you. This is a competitive world, right?
Well, and here's the thing that you guys really have to pay attention to, because we know when the market is hot and homes are pretty much selling themselves, if we're being honest, that the skills thing is not as important. But when there's a transitioning market and people get nervous, even your best past clients will secretly interview somebody against you. They're not going to tell you because you're friends. Okay, that's when things really start to hit the fan.
And they don't want you knowing if they're experiencing some personal hardships because of the changing market and you're buddies with them. They don't want to have you be part of their personal problems because you probably are part of the same center of influence as they are, and they don't want you possibly gossiping about them.
Which means you might not even get the call in the first place.
Right, but do you guys see the fallacy in the whole, centers of influence and past client marketing thing when the business starts to change? These are all, we're telling you guys the stone cold truth about how the real world works. You guys either like what we're saying or you don't, but we're not going to lie to you just to, sell you something. It's not going to happen. We're not going to lie to you just to make you feel good. We're not going to placate your fear of learning how to do the real work of real estate, by telling you that branding is going to get you in the end zone. It won't. None of those words will ever cross our mouths. Now, those things all have a place in real estate, but it comes long after, if ever, once you've mastered basically how to be an absolutely fantastic, your best version of yourself as a professional, problem solver, a professional salesperson, which is what a salesperson is. So, Julie, let's just hold the next points for next week.
Yes, you got it. Sounds good. And they're going into the weekend where they're supposed to be selling a lot of houses and helping a lot of people.
That's right. And so, holy tamale, we went an hour.
Wow. We only had a lot of stuff to say.
Yes, because we were on a roll.
That's right.
Oh, and the Zoe story.
Yes.
So did you reclaim your throne as being the boss of the house?
We'll see how this weekend goes.
That's right. I'm not sure you did. I think I saw her testing you a little bit, right? Yeah. Seeing what she'd get away with.
She's like a dinosaur at Jurassic Park trying to find the weak link.
Yeah, I know. You let your guard down.
I know.
She's going to have you locked in a closet. She's going to be giving you... So here's my prediction. In a week, Julie's going to be having 15-minute timeouts, and Zoe's going to walk around with that shirt that says, I am the house boss.
Probably. She's probably already ordered it. She orders crap all the time on her own. I know.
You guys have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you on Sunday on our Sunday show. Thank you for continuing to make this the number one listened to daily podcast for real estate professionals. And I am now bold enough to say in the world, because I've seen our national or our global stats. It's fantastic. Thank you for, what's it called? The company that just gave us that big prize for one of the top 3 influential podcasts. Inman did years ago. But what was the other one? Oh, Motley Fool.
Motley Fool,
yeah,
yes.
They just gave us a big prize for having one of the 3 most influential podcasts. And thanks for continuing to make Harris Rules on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. I kind of just put Barnes & Noble with quotes around because I think they're just a website now.
Sort of
continue to make that the best seller. That's fantastic.
And we've warned you about the Sunday show. It's not the same.
Yeah, that's right. It's Sunday's show. We have a whole bunch of wackadoodle things we've been
Unplugged.
saving all week. That's right. So you guys have a fantastic day. Listen to all of our past podcasts. Go to Stitcher, go to iTunes, go to wherever your favorite podcast listening device is. Please do us a favor and leave us a 5-star review. Don't give us a wimpy 4-star review. Come on now, you know better. Leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, and do consider purchasing the book. And when you do, please give us a great rating and join the nearly 400 other 5-star ratings on Amazon. In the meantime, you guys make it a great day, and we'll talk with you anytime on our past podcasts.
This program has been a presentation by Tim and Julie Harris, Real Estate Coaching. For more information on our real estate coaching and training programs, visit our website at timandjulieharris.com. Remember to tune in weekdays at noon for upcoming shows, and until next time, thank you for listening to Real Estate Coaching Radio with Tim and Julie Harris.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.